turn his camera on.
I don't know if I want to see that.
Updated results. Well,
I think it's over.
it's
No, damn it, hit the wrong button.
on the news app. You have the news app on your phone?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Right. So yesterday we mainly talked about anatomy of the lungs. Today we're going to break out the physiology. And if you notice, there's really not that much notes left, so we'll probably be able to go pretty quick today. Mainly just want to hit some big picture things and then understand what's going on with this chart right here. So looking at the mechanics of breathing, we already talked about that everything is about pressure, all about pressure. And if you know about pressure, you know about diffusion and effusion. Those are two words from chemistry class that hopefully you remember, or biology class, maybe with diffusion, not effusion. But diffusion is any movement from what pressure to what pressure?
High low.
Yeah, it's all about moving from high pressure to low pressure. When it used to be a big giant concept in biology on the EOC, I would have everybody get up and we would move around the classroom and demonstrate diffusion. And I always use the dance floor metaphor. Okay, so and you guys may not be old enough, and certainly in times of COVID, we don't really know much about it. But you know, one day, hopefully soon, you guys will be somewhere in college or something, and you'll go to the dance floor to try to strut your stuff and show off for somebody else, and then you know take care of some business. So you go to the dance floor and they play your song, but you're on a part of the dance floor you can't hardly move. You look over there, there's an empty part of the dance floor. You try to slide over there, get to the empty part of the dance floor, and move a little bit better. I don't know. It's always helped me understand how diffusion works. But mainly, the tightly packed particles are going to hit into each other and want to go places where they're more free to move around. So everything's wanting to move from high pressure to low pressure. Effusion is that exact same concept, just through a tiny hole. So effusion is the exact same concept, except for it can't happen as fast. And so really breathing is a type of effusion, E-F-F-U-S-I-O-N, where we got a relatively small hole relative to the air and to our lungs, and we can really control the speed at which those pressures are allowed to change. Now, how do we change the pressure in our thorax?
Diaphragm contracting.
Very good. Okay, so diaphragm has what shape? And I know my folks that dissect it know it. So we got my ugly little drawing I'm about to make of a person. Let's see here. I'm going to see how bad I can make it work. Whoa. Oh, wow. How you going to let me go up there? I see how it is. Let's stay out here, I guess. All right, wasn't that bad? Okay, so the diaphragm is going to be right here, but it is at rest. Your diaphragm is like that. Okay, and I exaggerated a little bit so you can see what's going on. Okay, but you know this because when you took your fingers inside that chest plate, when we were pulling the chest plate off, you could go way farther down the side than you could in the middle. You could feel way far down the diaphragm, and then if you fell over a little bit, you felt that diaphragm coming up and making that dome shape. When the diaphragm contracts, the only thing that happens is you go from this curve to straight across. So when you contract your diaphragm, you take this area and you make the area bigger. When you make the area bigger, what chemistry concept are we changing? Very good. Volume goes up. When volume goes up, pressure goes down. And that change in pressure is what allows us to breathe out. Or excuse me, in. That change in pressure allows us to breathe in because the pressure here is high, the pressure here is low, and air pushes into our lungs. Then when we relax our diaphragm, it goes back to normal, the air pushes out. Okay? Go.
How in the world does circum-breathing work then? If you like play the trumpet, the people that can breathe in while also blowing out of there.
Okay, so I don't have the greatest answer for that because that is an extremely rare talent, and it probably has more to do with cupping air in your cheeks and using your cheeks to force a little bit of out while you're breathing. But like the whole Kenny G thing where he's going out the side of his mouth, that's just kind of silly, extra mess. And I don't know, but my guess is it has nothing to do with thoracic pressure. It's all how you're working your mouth. And ways that you're moving your mouth around. That would be my guess. Feel free to research it and let us know. But that would be my guess on that. But Ryan did take us in a direction I do want to go, because this does have a lot to do with any music that you do, but specifically singing. Okay. I've been steeped in this because I've been in choir since 6th grade. We had a beautiful chorus in 6th grade in Grifton. I know you guys kind of hadn't really stuck around much if anybody went to Grifton, but at Grifton School we had a chorus, and from 6th grade to 8th grade I sang chorus, and then by the time I was in 8th grade I was in the church choir, and I stayed in the church choir until only very recently. But I've always kind of been singing, and my wife has been my director for a very long time because that's kind of how we met. But she really gets into breath control when it comes to singing. And when it comes to singing, she always hated when I would get up there and my lazy self would start to sing and I would do this. Amazing. Okay. The problem with that, what I do wrong? What would she say I did wrong when I go, amazing?
Took a deep breath.
Okay, but how did I take the breath? Yeah, but bigger than that.
Aggressively.
What part of my body?
Chest. Arms. Something.
Exactly. Up here. When you're breathing up here, you're using accessory muscles to expand your rib cage. You lose control over it. You lose control over it, and your voice cracks, and you can't control your pitch as well, and you can't get a nice, beautiful tone. You're not going to see anybody on the Grammys or performing that's breathing all up there like that and doing all kinds of weird things with their shoulders and their neck as they're singing, because you'll lose control of your singing. Okay? How did my wife always tell me to sing? With what part of my body when I breathe? Not my shoulders, not my neck, down here in your abdomen, because it's all about controlling that diaphragm. Breathing with your abdomen, controlling, instead of thinking up when you breathe, think down when you breathe. Think about increasing your thoracic volume, because it's much easier to control without using all of these accessory muscles. And there's some truth to the old adage of how do you know the opera is over?
Fat ladies.
Okay. And if you have more mass, if you are a bigger person, a lot of times that's going to allow you to really control that singing voice a whole lot better, because you have that abdomen, that volume that's easier to control. Whereas smaller framed people are not going to be able to control their breath as well. And this happens within the same people. I mean, you know, heaven help me, but Adele sounds better when she's fat. I mean, you know, Jennifer Hudson sounded a little bit better before she lost all that weight. What can I say? But that's beside the point. We're rolling on. Let's get to the notes. So all about pressure changes. You have 4 real main ways that we're going to be breathing. Starting off with quiet inspiration. Quiet inspiration is your normal breath in. The diaphragm contracts, your thorax gets bigger, lower pressure, air comes in, there you go, and you're done. Forced inspiration is what I'm talking about with all this. Okay, you can make a louder sound. If you're about to yell, yeah, use those extra muscles, but you're going to lose control of your pitch. That's why a lot of times when people yell, their voice cracks, because they can't control that air coming out. Okay, forced inspiration, you use your accessory muscles and your intercostal muscles to even decrease the pressure even further and really get that air inside. Okay, really make this volume big when you breathe in. Then if you have quiet and forced inspiration, it stands to reason that you'll have quiet and forced expiration. Quiet expiration is air coming out. Now, here's what's really interesting about this. Quiet expiration, normal, not thinking about it, breathing out, is completely passive. What does that mean?
Nothing.
What's passive? And when I'm talking biology or life sciences, passive versus active.
Involuntary.
Sort of, but there's a better way to think of it. Like passive transport versus active transport.
Passive is something like actually not passive, but active, something actively has to happen to cause that to happen.
That's the broad definition. When you go down to life sciences, when you go down to anatomy specifically, active is very clearly using ATP and passive is not. Okay? Active uses ATP, breathing in uses ATP because I got to contract that diaphragm. You got to use some ATP, use some energy. It takes no energy to breathe out with quiet expiration. It takes no energy because everything just bounces back. Your muscle relaxes, it bounces back. Your lungs, these alveoli, it's all about the elastic recoil. We're going to talk about tomorrow when we talk about pathology of the lungs. We're going to talk about lungs have what's called surfactant, and it's kind of like this WD-40 that keeps the lungs bouncy. Okay, your lungs are really healthy when they're bouncy. There's two ways that can go wrong, and they're at two extremes of age. Let's go with the old age first. What can I do to my lungs to make them not bouncy? Smoke cigarettes. What do we call it? Loss of elastic recoil because you smoke cigarettes.
Black lung.
Emphysema. Emphysema. It's when you have the old lady shows up at the doctor's office. I'm going to take my mask off for a second to demonstrate this. Old lady shows up at the doctor's office and says, I can't ever catch my breath. And you see her sitting in the corner like this. Okay, because what she's doing is making a very, very small hole with her lips, or his lips, not picking on any woman here. But make that very, very small hole. What you're doing is you're creating back pressure into your lungs and forcing your lungs to bounce, even though they don't want to. So that loss of quiet expiration is big. Now, go to the other end, babies. You know, one of the things we're going to talk about when we talk about that is inevitable, that we always talk about when we talk about ethics of anatomy, is viability of a fetus. Okay. And you know when we cross that line into, you know, human or zygote, what's the limiting factor for a viability of a fetus outside of the body? When do you have a heartbeat? Give you a hint. When in doubt, if you're talking about human embryology, the answer is 4 weeks after conception. When you have a heartbeat, 4 weeks. When you see a brain and notochord, 4 weeks. Okay. When you see organs that are defined, 4 weeks. That's kind of the rule of thumb. So 4 weeks old baby's got a heartbeat. Okay. Does that mean if you deliver a fetus at 4 weeks, it's going to live? No. So it ain't the circulatory system. Well, obviously, what's the limiting factor? Yeah, it's all about the lungs. You deliver a baby that's much more than about 24, 25 weeks of gestation, your lungs can't work. Your lungs can't work, not because they're not there, not because the system isn't there with the diaphragm and alveoli, but because there is no surfactant. There's no surfactant, the lungs can't bounce, the baby breathes in, the baby can't get the air out. The baby can't get the air out, and the fetus dies of respiratory failure. That is the most common cause of death for a premature infant. Respiratory distress syndrome from a lack of surfactant.
Wouldn't it also be fatal because their lungs are designed to breathe in fluid instead of air?
The lungs aren't designed to breathe. No, stick with me. The lungs aren't designed to breathe in fluid instead of air. It just so happens that they do because that's what's there. It's like the lungs are practicing. Okay, so it's not like that you know the lungs have this would prefer breathing in fluid at the time. It's just that's what's there, and the reflex to breathe is also there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So quiet expiration, passive process is all about having bouncy lungs. Forced expiration is birthday. What do I mean?
when you cry.
No.
I mean, no.
What kind of birthdays are you having?
I mean, when you cry.
Poor James. Oh my goodness, I need to talk to James' mom and daddy. Bless your heart.
When you cry.
This is party and he'll cry if he wants to.
Oh.
No, James, not when you cry, when
That's
you.
like day of birth.
Oh, okay, I hear what you're saying. That's not really what I was going for, though. I hear what you're
When
saying.
you blow
I
out
meant
the
blowing out candles. Forced expiration. Forced expiration, blowing out candles. You're going to not only allow that elastic recoil, but you're going to clench your abdominal muscles and decrease the pressure in your abdomen to get that forced expiration, that forced air out. Okay. So some physical factors for ventilation. We'll talk about this more tomorrow. We've already talked about alveolar surface tension, which is that surfactant, which allows the alveoli to be elastic, to expand and bounce back. Then you also have airway resistance, the friction that is encountered by the air. We're going to talk about the pathologies that deal with both of these. The pathologies that deal with surface tension have to do with, respiratory stress syndrome and emphysema. What pathologies might deal with airway resistance? You have trouble getting the air to your lungs. Asthma, absolutely. Yesterday we talked about saving somebody with a tracheotomy with a pin. I've never had asthma, for praise be, but things I've heard from people having asthma, it's like breathing through a coffee stirring straw. Is that a really, really tough asthma attack is that you just cannot catch up because you're breathing through such a small airway. Okay? You know what well, I guess it is a little bit of anatomy, but the Mr. Tire solution to having kids without asthma is?
What?
Come on, James, help me out.
I mean,
You're my asthmatic child, right?
I've done research and I've also found out that asthma can be caused psychologically.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, if you
I
don't,
developed it because I wasn't exposed. I didn't go to pre-K because I wasn't exposed to kids at an early age.
hey, now we're talking, we're getting down that road. If you don't want your child to have a baby, if you don't want your child to have asthma, what you're going to do is, first off, you have your baby and you keep him in a plastic bubble and you protect him for a year, because that's how long it takes for that baby's immune system to roll. For the first year of life, a baby's really depending on the residual immune system they're getting from mama. That's why babies are so susceptible to respiratory infection. That's why babies are so susceptible to things like the flu. Thank God they're not susceptible to COVID. Holy mackerel, we'd be in a heck of a mess. Okay? But, one day we might have a respiratory infection that does affect infants. But once that baby hits a year old, that baby's going to start really working on his own immune system. So you take a year-old baby and you take them outside on their first birthday and you rub them in the dirt. And I say that kind of joking, but not really. Because how do we have a good immune system that responds to all kinds of different things? We're exposed to it. And I say this because, I'm pointing to myself, but I don't think I ever had any asthmatic problems because I lived in the woods. Every day I'm outside in the woods when I was little and moving on, doing all over the place. We heat with wood. So I had to cut down the trees and we had to put the wood in the fireplace and everything was always, I got it, Whereas we have huge asthmatic populations now because we live in this controlled environment. We breathe manufactured air all day, every day. Who knows what the long-term effects will be of breathing our particulates back in all day. Obviously I'm not saying don't wear a mask because save freaking lives. And I know some people say, oh, well, teenagers aren't going to die, blah, 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 blah. You're right, but your grandmama is. So let's calm down with that. Let's not take COVID home to her. Okay. But who knows what the long-term reaction of having an entire society who's spending most of the day breathing in their own particulates. I don't know. Maybe it'll help us with our asthma. Maybe it'll make it different. I don't know. Okay. But let's look at this, lung volumes. A couple different things I want to talk about. First one is tidal volume. Tidal volume is your normal in and out breathing without thinking about it. Now, if you look at this chart, it's not labeled. It probably should be labeled. We're talking about the volume here on the y-axis and time on the x-axis. So this person's breathing and this person is breathing normal. The doctor's not saying anything. If your doctor's office, you're doing a physical, you want to check somebody's breathing, what do?
Put your hand on their back.
You can put your hand on their back, or you can use your stethoscope,
Yeah.
listen to their back. One of the big no-nos though is you don't say, I'm gonna listen to your breathing. Why?
Because they're gonna try and breathe.
Exactly. The person immediately starts thinking about their breathing, or they hold their breath, and then they're thinking about it, they change how they normally would breathe. So you don't tell them you're listening to their breathing, you just put your stethoscope on their back, listen to their normal breathing. Then once you get this nice, pretty tidal volume, the doctor says, what did the doctor say right here?
Big deep breath.
Take a big, nice, deep breath as much as you can. You get your inspiratory reserve volume, the leftover space in your lungs where you can breathe more in. So the doctor said, breathe in as much as you can. And then the doctor said, breathe out as much as you can. You have your expiratory reserve volume. You always have more you can breathe out. You always have more than you can breathe in. And then the interesting thing here is that the line doesn't go down all the way to the bottom. You never take your lung volumes to zero, because what do we call that?
Deflate.
Well, there's another term,
Collapse.
a collapsed lung. And a collapsed lung is a problem because it's hard to uncollapse it. The way I've always explained it to people is to think about a balloon. If you want to blow up a balloon, would you rather blow up a balloon that's been loosely laying on the counter that you can, see that it has a little bit of opening to it? Or would you rather blow up a balloon that's been flattened under a book for a day? You want the one that's a little bit open, right? Sometimes if the book had been flattened or the balloon had been flattened, it's hard to start getting that air in. If you leave some residual volume, you can always start the air getting back in. If you let it completely collapse, it's hard to start it. And so you always save some air in your lungs. You can never breathe out all the air in your lungs, thank goodness, because that would be a big problem. And this person was able to return to normal breathing with no problem. So you definitely need to know these terms. Vital capacity is all of the air that you could breathe for life. There's actually another one that's not up here, which is total lung capacity, which would be from zero to the top, which would just be all the air that you can hold, your total lung capacity. Vital capacity is all the air minus your residual volume. Tidal volume is your normal breath, tides going in and out, expiratory reserve, inspiratory reserve. Feel good? That's pretty much it on lungs. We'll talk about some more pathology tomorrow. If you're at home, or we'll probably spend some time in this tomorrow as well. You have your lab that is up, ready to go. It's pretty simple. I just want you to watch the YouTube video because it's an interesting story and it'll get you thinking about breath holding. There's also another YouTube video if you want to check it out. If you just search for David Blaine's TED Talk about breath holding, it's pretty interesting. He's kind of an interesting fellow that's a little bit different. So regardless of your take on him, it's a neat talk about how to hold breath and different strategies to get that to work. So have a great day. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, send this off.